That thing on your arm, what a joke. The words sliced through the summer air, sharp and mocking. Too young to know real fear. Camp Harrow's family day stretched wide beneath the late afternoon sun. Children kicked a soccer ball across the field. Barbecue smoke drifted above picnic tables. From the rifle range came the steady crack of rifles, a fragile bubble of peace until the sneer shattered it. On a wooden bench sat Elias Graves Mercer, 84. His back was straight, his hands steady on his knees, on his forearm. A faded tattoo clung stubbornly, a serpent coiled tight around a star. Time had blurred it, but the mark still carried weight. The one mocking him was Sergeant Mason Cade Rourke, 27. His ranger tab stitched crisp on his uniform. He twirled a half-eaten corn dog like a baton, his buddies laughing behind him. Seriously, old man, what's that supposed to be? Something you picked up drunk in Saigon? Another chimed in, looks like a worm choking on a bottle cap. The laughter spread, but the crowd shifted uneasily. Parents pulled children closer. Faces tightened. This wasn't humor, it was cruelty. Rourke leaned forward, voice loud enough for all to hear. Cover it up. Pop. You're embarrassing us. The Army's got standards now. Mercer kept his eyes on the children, listening to their laughter, sweet, fragile, the kind he once thought he'd never hear again. Only then did he turn, meeting the young sergeant's smirk. His voice rasped, low but steady. It has its meaning. Rourke scoffed. I bet it does. What fought off a whole division with one rifle? Old men forget which lies they've told. The insult struck heavy. The ring of onlookers fell silent. Even Rourke's friends shifted nervously. But the sergeant pressed harder, snapping his palm open like a demand. Show me your ID. Stolen valor's a crime. The words hit like a grenade. Around them, the parade ground froze. Slowly. Mercer pulled a worn leather wallet from his pocket. The clasp cracked as it opened. His stiff fingers moved carefully, and a black and white photo slipped free, tumbling to the ground. For a heartbeat, the Georgia sun dissolved into jungle heat. Candlelight flickered. Sweat dripped. A captain's whisper cut through the dark. They will never know our names, but they will know we were here. Gunpowder and ash burned a serpent-and-star into young flesh. A pact made in silence. Then it was gone. The parade ground returned, bright and tense. Rourke's hand still hovered, demanding, "Come on, old man, the ID." The crowd leaned in. Breath caught. Mercer's fingers tightened on the wallet. The storm was gathering, and Camp Harrow had no idea what was about to break. Stolen valor. The accusation cracked across the parade ground like a whip. Sergeant Mason Cade Rourke's hand hovered in front of Elias Mercer, palm open, demanding obedience. Families froze mid-step. Parents whispered. Children stared. The cheer of family day collapsed into silence. Mercer did not move. His breath was calm, his fingers resting on the worn leather wallet in his lap. That quiet defiance only fueled Rourke's temper. The young sergeant straightened, his voice raised for all to hear. "You don't belong here. Old man, show me your papers or I'll have you escorted off this field. Straight to the VA if I have to." The laugh that followed from his buddies rang hollow. Even they felt the crowd turning. What had begun as mockery now looked like cruelty. Near the climbing wall, Maya Torres, 34, froze with her phone in hand. She had seen arrogance before. This was different. This was a line crossed. Her stomach tightened as she pressed a number she knew by heart. "Dad," she whispered when the call connected. "They're harassing an old man. He has a tattoo, a snake wrapped around a star. They're calling him a fraud." The silence on the line was heavy. Then retired Command Sergeant Major Harold Vance spoke, his voice hard as steel. "Don't let him leave. Keep him there. I'm making the call. You don't know who you're looking at." Vance's word carried weight. Within moments, the Provost Marshal and the Garrison Sergeant Major had the incident logged. MPs were already moving. Back on the field. Rourke's patience snapped. He reached for Mercer's forearm. "Sergeant, hands off." An MP corporal slid between them, breathless from a sprint. Two more fanned out, palms open, forming a barrier. A collective gasp rolled through the crowd. To lay hands on a veteran, frail or not, was a violation of something sacred. Mercer remained still, his eyes, faded but steady, locked on the young ranger. Then came the sirens. From the east access road, MP bikes and a cruiser cut across the grass. White fleet SUVs followed, braking hard at the parade edge. Families pulled back, picnic blankets abandoned. The air shifted instantly. Festive chatter replaced by the hum of authority. The rear door opened. 4 stars glinted in the sunlight. General Arthur R. Hale stepped out, stride clipped and certain. He didn't glance at the Rangers, his eyes fixed on the old man seated calmly on the bench. He stopped 3 feet away, his jaw tightening as though he'd seen a ghost. Then, before the entire parade ground, he raised his hand in the sharpest salute of his career. "Sergeant Mercer," Hale said, voice clear. "Carrying, it is an honor." "Sir." The crowd erupted in whispers. Rourke stood frozen, shame flooding his face. And then a voice cut through the air. "You're saluting a ghost. General, tell us why." The storm had only begun. "You're saluting a ghost. General, tell us why." The challenge cut through the silence like a blade. The crowd shifted, hundreds of eyes fixed on General Arthur R. Hale. His salute lowered slowly, but his gaze never left Elias Graves Mercer. "For those who don't understand," Hale began, his voice steady and commanding, "you're looking at the last living member of Task Force Night Viper." The words rippled through the crowd. To most, the name meant nothing. To a few older officers, gray-haired historians, it landed like thunder. Families gasped, soldiers traded bewildered glances. A legend, long whispered in footnotes and dismissed as rumor, had just stepped into daylight. Hale's aide stepped forward with a slim file sealed in red wax. The general broke it open with trembling fingers. Inside were photographs. Yellowed and brittle gaunt men. Uniforms torn, eyes burning with defiance. In one image, arms bared. A serpent coiled around a star inked into skin. The same mark Mercer carried still. "The year was 1969, Hale said. His tone was heavy, each word dropping like steel. An Air Force officer went down carrying intelligence that could have doomed thousands. No conventional unit could reach him, so they sent 12 men. Night Viper." His voice carried across the field, pulling every ear into its orbit. They went 50 miles behind enemy lines, outnumbered 100 to 1. For 3 days, they survived on grit, steel, and silence. Officially, every one of them died there. Mothers covered their mouths. Rangers stood stiff, their arrogance bleeding away. The record was wrong. Hale continued. His hand shook slightly as he closed the file. One man survived. Elias Mercer brought the pilot out, alone, hunted, wounded. Then he vanished. Until today. The air hung thick with awe. Soldiers who moments ago had laughed now stared as though at a monument. But Mercer's eyes drifted far from the crowd. The Georgia sun dimmed in his mind, replaced by the suffocating heat of the jungle. Sweat on young skin, the rasp of a candle flame, a captain's whisper. There will be no parade, no stones with our names. The world will never know. But we will know. Gunpowder and ash seared the serpent-and-star into his flesh. Around him, 11 brothers waited their turn. Within 72 hours, every one of them would fall. Flash rifle fire in the trees. Flash knives in the dark when ammunition ran dry. Flash dragging a bleeding pilot toward a ridge. The thunder of a Jolly Green helicopter fighting to land. The jungle lit by fire. Then silence. Mercer blinked, the vision breaking. The present rushed back, blinding. The crowd still stared. General Hale's voice cracked, raw despite its strength. For 50 years, his name was erased. Today, you see him. Sergeant Mercer is not only a veteran, he is living proof that honor does not die with the men who carried it. Tears streaked faces in the crowd. Families applauded. Soldiers saluted. Maya Torres clutched her phone, recording what no one could deny anymore. But Rourke, the young ranger who had mocked him, stood frozen, lips trembling, shame carving into his face. He had jeered at the last sentinel of a brotherhood erased from history. Mercer did not look at him. His gaze was distant, lips moving, whispering names only he could hear. Then, from the operations center, a soldier sprinted across the field, clutching a radio. His face was pale, voice ragged as he shouted, "General, sir, there's been an intrusion on the comms net. Someone out there knows the call sign Night Viper, and they're asking if Mercer is alive." The words froze the parade ground. For the first time all day, Elias Mercer's eyes widened. The storm at Camp Harrow had only just begun. "Stand down. Rangers, you've forgotten what that tab means." The command thundered across Camp Harrow like an artillery blast. For 3 seconds, no one breathed. Soldiers and families alike turned to General Arthur R. Hale, his voice cutting like steel. Sergeant Mason Cade Rourke and his buddies stood stiff, their faces drained. The mockery that had seemed so effortless minutes earlier now clung to them like poison. They wore the Ranger tab, but in that moment it felt like a badge they had betrayed. General Hale stepped forward, each stride sharp, his finger stabbing the air. "You wear that tab as if it grants you glory, but today you disgraced it in front of families, in front of children, in front of a man whose sacrifice makes your arrogance microscopic. You think you understand hardship, you think you know sacrifice, you're not fit to stand in his shadow." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Even senior officers flanking Hale looked unsettled by the force in his words. This wasn't ceremony. This was judgment. Hale pivoted to his aide, his tone clipped. "Take their names. All of them. Effective immediately. Confine them to quarters. Their tabs are suspended pending review. They will undergo remedial history instruction, and each man will submit a written statement of accountability addressed directly to Sergeant Mercer." The punishment was precise, surgical. No theatrics. No public humiliations, just the weight of military justice. The young Rangers shifted uneasily, realizing the system they thought shielded them had become their reckoning. Rourke's eyes flicked toward Mercer. The old man hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. His silence was heavier than any verdict. Hale's voice softened, dropping from fire to solemn steel. "This uniform does not make the soldier. The soldier makes the uniform. Forget that truth. And you betray every name etched in stone." Applause erupted, families clapping, soldiers saluting, some even weeping openly. The parade ground felt transformed, as if the soil itself had been consecrated by truth. But Hale was not finished. He raised his hand, signaling sharply. A color guard marched forward. A bugler lifted his horn. Soldiers unfurled the flag. The atmosphere thickened. Reverent. "Today," Hale declared, his voice steady as granite. "We will do what history refused to do. We will honor Sergeant Elias Mercer." The bugle's notes cut through the sky, solemn and pure. Two officers stepped forward with a velvet case. Inside gleamed the Distinguished Service Cross and a Purple Heart medals Mercer should have received decades ago. Hale pinned them to Mercer's chest with deliberate care. The old man's shoulders lifted not from pride, but from the weight of memory pressing down. Families rose to their feet. Soldiers saluted. Children stared wide-eyed at the frail figure who seemed, in that moment, larger than life. Maya Torres filmed through tears, knowing the world would now see what had once been erased. But Mercer's eyes did not shine with triumph. They were distant, unfocused, lips moving silently as he whispered names no one else could hear, the brothers who had never come home. Then a soldier sprinted from the operations center, clutching a radio. His face was pale, his voice cracked with urgency. "Sir, you need to hear this. The comms intrusion isn't random." Static hissed. A voice bled through, low and broken, warped by distance. "Night Viper. 12 went in. 1 came out. We know who you are. Graves." The crowd froze. The honor guard faltered mid-salute. Hale seized the handset. Knuckles white. "Identify yourself." A silence. Then laughter, harsh. Ragged. Not the laugh of a stranger. A sound Mercer knew. His eyes widened, his hand gripping the bench. Impossible. The voice returned, jagged and cruel. "You left us behind." The air turned to stone. Families clutched each other. Soldiers stiffened. Elias Mercer, thought to be the last ghost of Night Viper, realized he might not be alone after all. The storm at Camp Harrow faded, but its echo carried far beyond the parade ground. By nightfall, the story was already spreading like wildfire clips on social media, headlines asking how a forgotten ghost had walked back into the light. Elias Graves Mercer wanted none of it. A week later, he sat in his usual booth at a diner just outside the base. The hum of the jukebox filled the silence, and a chipped mug of black coffee steamed in front of him. Here. No one asked questions. No one stared at the tattoo. He was just another old man taking his time with a bitter drink. The bell above the door jingled. Mercer didn't look up right away. Boots crossed the linoleum. A shadow fell across the table. "Sir," a young voice said quietly. "Sergeant Mercer." Mercer raised his eyes. Sergeant Mason Cade Rourke stood there, not in uniform, but in jeans and a worn jacket. His arrogance was gone. Stripped clean, what remained was a man weighed down by shame, but searching for something better. Mercer gestured to the empty seat. "Sit down." Rourke slid into the booth, laying a thick-bound document on the table. "This is my essay, the history module. My apology." His voice cracked on the last word. Mercer didn't touch it. He pushed the paper back gently. "I don't need to read it." "Son, I only need to know if you understand it." Rourke met his gaze. Eyes steady. "I do. I understand now. But if you don't mind me asking, I don't want to hear about the battle. The records told me that much. I want to know about them. The men, what were they like?" Mercer's eyes softened. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, slowly, he began. He spoke of Diaz, who could make a meal out of rations and jungle roots, of Murphy, who carried a harmonica in his breast pocket and played it the night before missions, of their captain, who whispered poetry under candlelight because it steadied men more than orders ever could. One by one, Mercer spoke their names, bringing the ghosts back to life not as soldiers, but as men. Rourke listened without moving, his breath shallow, his eyes damp. The myths he'd been fed about war, about glory, about invincibility were stripped away. What remained was truth, the quiet, humankind. When Mercer finally fell silent, the diner seemed heavier, filled with invisible company. Rourke nodded once, slowly, as if sealing a pact. He pulled a 20 from his wallet, setting it on the table for the coffee. "Sir, thank you." He stood, his boots quiet now, and walked out into the night. Mercer stayed seated. His eyes drifted to the window, where headlights blurred into streaks of light. His hand found the edge of the old tattoo, tracing the serpent and the star. For the first time in decades, he didn't feel alone. The world would remember Task Force Night Viper now. Not for their secrecy, not for the myths, but for the lives they lived and the promise they kept. Mercer lifted his coffee, raised it slightly toward the empty space across the booth, and whispered, "Say their names."